The second episode of Tokyo Ghoul has solidified my love of the series. I'm officially interested at this point. After this week's brutal, badass, kick-ass, action-packed episode, I'm really psyched to see what the rest of the show is going to offer. Not to mention, this week's episode also had a brand new intro, which was filled to the brim with some vivid imagery and a song which will leave you feeling somber, and it'll also pump you up enough to go outside and punch a freaking grizzly bear in the face. If you can't tell, I'm pretty excited about this show, and for a number of reasons. I love all of the different prospects of it. I like that in this week's episode, not only did we finally get to see a little bit more of Kaneki's powers, thanks in part to his brand new ghoul transplants, but we also got to learn a little bit more about the ghouls themselves, how long they've existed, certain foods that they actually are allowed to eat, not to mention the end of the episode teased some brand new characters, which I'm guessing are a group of ghoul hunters, and they might even be connected to the Vatican, and that's because they're wearing these cross necklaces. It's this one old crazy guy, and it's this one younger guy, and they even mentioned the binge eater Rize, but they also mentioned there's been another Jason sighting, and that's related to that one character, I'm guessing, from the first episode, who had the Jason hockey mask. And I'm a huge fan of Friday the 13th, and this just gets me really excited to see what they're going to do with this character, who clearly is an homage to the classic slasher villain Jason. Otherwise, this episode was filled to the brim with a ton of badass action scenes, and we also got to see a little bit of emotional stuff as well. But let's just talk about some of the highlights. The episode actually opens up with Toka beating the ever-living shit out of Kaneki, and she's trying to snap him out of his funk and trying to get him to realize, look, you're going to have to eat some human flesh eventually, otherwise you're just going to starve to death, and starving for a ghoul is absolutely the worst thing possible. However, there is a small remedy for this, and she actually shows him a little bit of mercy. Toka brings Kaneki to her coffee shop, which is run by this old guy who is also a ghoul, and this is where we learn that ghouls can apparently drink coffee, and they enjoy it. It's really the only other food that they can do this with aside from human flesh. And I'm not really sure why this is. I'm sure there's going to be a bigger explanation for it later. But the thing that's really strange and really off-putting about this scene personally is the fact that the owner of this coffee shop, this old guy, actually gives Kaneki this package, which I'm assuming is processed human flesh. And he even mentions that if you ever need more, please come back and see me. And Kaneki goes back to his home and he's contemplating what to do. And even Rize is sort of like inside of him and still has consciousness and is trying to push him to eat human flesh. And that's really where a lot of the conflict comes from this week's episode. However, there was a nice little twist where we actually get to see the return of that one ghoul by the name of Nishio, who was seen in last week's episode. And this guy is a total dickhead, but he really gets his comeuppance in this week's episode. We get to learn that he's actually friends with Hide, and then when Hide actually runs into Kaneki, they have this confrontation where they run into each other, and he realizes, oh shit, we're sort of like in the same area. We go to the same school, and then Nishio somehow manipulates both of them into going underneath this bridge where he's going to plan to kill them. And that just gives us an excuse for a badass action scene where we finally get to see Kaneki unleash his ghoul abilities. And it's really action-packed, to say the least. And I love the colors they use in this scene, too, because Nishio's ghoul powers, he has these tentacles erupt from his legs and from his back. And they have the color of turquoise and blue and all like neon colored, and they look completely different from Kaneki's abilities, which apparently are these big, nasty red tentacles which literally bubble and explode from his backside. And it's a really great action sequence, and it really demonstrates what the show is going to be all about. And frankly, it's really brutal. However, there is this one part of the action scene where Nishio is seemingly defeated, and they put this filter over it, and I'm not sure if it's for censorship or if it's for artistic reasons, but I don't know. Otherwise, the point is there. Kaneki just destroys this guy, but then Toka shows up, and she tries to snap him out of going crazy a little bit, and she even demonstrates her power. She has this like weird fire eruption come from her back for like a split second, and it's inferred that she beat the crap out of him, and she brings him back, and everything is fine, but that's pretty much it. That's mostly the end of the episode, aside from the stuff at the very end with these brand new characters who I'm assuming are ghoul hunters or like professional ghoul hunters. Think like Van Helsing and vampire type of stuff. But otherwise, what's the rundown on this week's episode of Tokyo Ghoul? I freaking loved it. I loved everything about it. The pacing was good. The characters are interesting. the actual turmoil that Kaneki is going through is interesting because it's been brought up multiple times. He's not exactly human, he's not exactly Ghoul, and he can't really fit in anywhere. It's not until the end of the episode where that old guy who runs the coffee shop lets him know he's a unique case. He has the ability to live within both worlds, but we also saw in this episode that Nishio apparently was able to live pretty comfortably among humans, and he was even able to stomach that human food, and that just shows that some of these guys are going to be really underhanded and crazy. Other than Rize being like a really important Ghoul character, I like the fact that they're mentioning that that one Jason character is apparently going to be a standby. I was really impressed when I saw him in the first episode, and his powers looked really crazy. He like summoned some sort of like weird giant spiked weapon, which looked like it was almost sort of like a tentacle as well. That seems to be the thing with the Ghouls. They seem to have like tentacle abilities or something around that reason, I don't know. But then of course there's Toka, who had that weird like fire stuff coming out of her back, which they also show in the intro as well. And speaking of the intro, I mentioned that it had a lot of vivid imagery, and a lot of that has to do with the colors. There's a lot of scenes where you get to see characters like Toka and Rize. Like Toka has that stuff coming out of her back, and there's a lot of like different colors coming in. It's almost like fiber optics changing colors. It looks really awesome, and it's very eye-catching, and it goes really well with the song, and of course it gives you a lot of previews to some of the things that are going to be happening later, and some of the new characters and everything, and as most intros should do, it pumps you up for it. But otherwise, I loved this episode. I thought it was really well paced. It had a lot of really cool action. We got to learn a little bit more about the Ghouls. Hide looks a lot like a younger version of Ichigo Kurosaki from Bleach. I just had to say that before I forgot it. Otherwise, I friggin' loved this episode of Tokyo Ghoul, and I'm going to give it its very first score, and believe it or not, the second episode, for me, is a 10 out of 10. I loved this episode. It didn't have any, like, weird, stupid filler moments. Every scene felt really important and impactful, and it's got me really excited for the rest of the show. So check it out, guys. Tokyo Ghoul, it kicks a lot of ass. Thank you guys for watching my video today. If you guys watched this week's episode of Tokyo Ghoul, I would love to hear your thoughts about it and love to hear what you hope to see from the rest of the series. Also, if you like this video, make sure and give it a like, give it a thumbs up, it really helps us out, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And also check out the links below so you can check us out on Facebook and Twitter. So guys, that concludes my review today. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.